Hey guys, how are you all doing tonight? This is the Adventure Photo Show. I am Steve Riker, if we have not yet met, and I'm excited that you're joining me for this unboxing of the Fuji XE3. And I have to be honest that even though I put more effort into the thumbnail image for this video than I have in most cases, I honestly find unboxings to be a little bit silly, but I am pretty excited about this camera. And it is my hope to be able to do some interesting comparison between the X100F, the X Pro 1, and even the XT2 from memory, because I shot with that for a whole bunch, against the XE3 and kind of see what what shakes out here. So I'm going to get to the unboxing in just a second. What I would like to ask is anybody who is watching this, if you have questions specifically about the XE3, I would love it if you would leave them in a comment on this video, especially if you're watching after the live stream, because the comments that I get and questions really do help me to make better reviews and have better sort of approach to all the stuff that I'm doing as I kind of go through the motions over the next couple of weeks with this. And I really want to be able to give a good in-depth review and some reactions to this camera. Because frankly, I was really excited by the XE3 when I heard about it, because this is the first camera that it feels like Fuji has really gone all in with the whole touchscreen technology. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the unboxing, and then those of you guys, and I'm not ignoring you guys that I'm seeing popping up in the chat, I'm stoked to see this many people here. What I want to do is kind of go through the unboxing first, and then we'll chat a little bit, go through some questions that anybody has, and I'll answer as much as I can and kind of go from there, okay? So in the meantime, I'm going to try to do this without severing any fingers, although I suppose that my training as a nurse, don't open it yet. You're still driving home. You're driving and texting on YouTube. That's like a whole, that's worse than driving and texting. Okay, well, why don't I do this? Since we're waiting for Peter to get home, I can't wait super long, but what I'll do is I'll take a couple of these, field a couple of questions before we actually unbox it a little bit. Man, they're blowing up here. I didn't think this many people. Hi, Samuel, King Uzi, Sean Kim style, Peter, of course, driving. Don't respond to that, Peter, until you're home. Kaiwi asks if I still use a GH5 much. Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to get the camera angles right here, guys. Sorry. Yeah, the GH5 is still absolutely a fantastic camera. And I know that I'm going to provoke some ire from some people for stalling on the unboxing and for mentioning my honest opinion about this, because I've done a lot of comparison between the XT2, the Fuji, the APS-C, the bigger sensor, the fan favorite, and the GH5, which, as a video, primarily seen as a video camera, a lot of people are kind of down on it from a stills perspective. And I got to tell you, the GH5 is, when it comes to a tool that I use to do any sort of work that I'm going to be doing, if I had to pick one camera to do the majority of the work that I would be doing, I would feel comfortable taking the GH5. And to the exclusion of everything else, I think it is amazing all the way across the board. And I know I'm not here to talk about the GH5, but the thing I want to get across is that my love of Fuji is just that. Like, I love Fuji cameras. I shoot them because I enjoy the experience and the aesthetic of them and the way that it feels in that process. It has a different feel to it. That's the only way I can put it. But in terms of just utility, like I need a hammer to drive a nail type of utility, the GH5 all day, every day. So yeah, I do still use a GH5 a whole bunch, and I'm going to be continuing to use that. And happy to answer questions on that in just a little bit. But since I've been given the go-ahead, let's go ahead and crack this open here, shall we? I want to point out the artistic embellishments here. This is my daughter's work. She really got excited to draw on the box, and we made a deal. I told her that if she did not drop the box on the floor and break the untested and not cheap camera gear on the floor, go right ahead. So win-win. Yeah, happy to answer that, and I'm probably going to be missing a bunch of questions here because I'm focused on not lacerating my hands and fingers opening the box. But I will catch up with these questions here in a bit. And then whatever I don't catch up with in the live stream, just leave it in the comments because I want this to be kind of short so that I can actually have a chance to get busy playing with this and testing it out and getting some answers for you. So I'm not going to give you a play-by-play of all the packing. They packed the box well, and I'm happy with that. I got this with the 23mm lens, so that should be a little interesting tidbit to compare with the X100F, just to kind of put those again on the compare those to each other, because there's a lot of discussion about whether or not which one is sharper, and I think that we already know that the 23mm XF is going to be sharper than the X100F, but it's a matter of whether you really need absolute sharpness at all apertures more, or if you need portability more, because I think that little bit of space savings that you get, it does make the lens a little bit softer, but not to a huge amount of detriment, I think, because a lot of times, if you're shooting at f2, you're shooting wide open because you want a little more bokeh, and I think in those types of scenarios, a lot of times a little extra softness can add a nice aesthetic, and so it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It's just, it depends on what it is that you're looking for. So, try not to get this thing all messy here. Very interesting. It feels to me a lot like the XT2, and kind of light. It's not super. It's light but not flimsy. I would say it seems like a nice balance. And I'm a big, I don't want to say purist, because I don't really base my decision on anything other than just how I feel about it. But I'm fairly picky about the ergonomics of a camera, how it feels in my hand, and this actually, with no lens on it at this point, obviously, but it feels small, but not excessively small. And I have to say, one of the things I was really curious about was kind of this little area in here to see what the real estate would be like and what kind of purchase I would have on this. So it feels like it's a really nice balance, and it sits in the hand good, which is something that I'm really excited about just right out of the gate, because if I can find the X100F here, the F actually has a similar type of setup. I'm going to show you these two side by side. But if you look at the F, which is this one right here, X100F, versus this, you can see the XE3 has a little kind of nub there, a little knurl that kind of sticks out on the side, whereas the F doesn't have that. And so, again, it's a small detail. It's not like something that I even put into the recent video that I just did about the X100F. It's still, you can still hold it well because it has that decent amount of real estate here in between the joystick and the Q button on the F. And that amount of real estate makes it possible to still get good purchase, but with the XE3 you have that same amount of real estate, plus you have a nice little thumb catch right there, and that is something that I'm really stoked about, because for a camera that is this small, especially when you put on a larger lens like a 16mm lens, etc., it is going to, that extra weight is going to make an impact on the way the camera handles and the way that it carries. So that's really going to be the test, and what I want to do here, and I'm going to put this down for just a second. King Yuzi, I saw you just asked if they have the same sensor, the X100F and the XE3. The 100F and the XE3 do have the same sensor. I believe the processing is slightly different within the XE3. Actually, it's the processing, from what I've heard, and again, I haven't tested it, and I'm not a researcher, but what I've heard is that it's actually more comparable to the autofocus in the XT2, and even faster, because the processing is upgraded. It has a better algorithm or something that makes the autofocus 13% faster or something like that, engineers would probably be licking their chops over, but something that I'm kind of you know, it may or may, I didn't have a huge problem with the autofocus capabilities of the X100F, but it was noticeably slower than the XT2. This is supposed to be at least as fast, or maybe even faster than the XT2. So that's kind of what I have heard there. Honestly, I haven't seen a huge amount of images out of the XE3 yet, and if I can get the lens out of here, maybe we'll have a chance to give this a whirl. So I got the 23mm lens, got it all as a kit on Amazon, and for the record, I'm going to put Amazon links down below this, and I'm not shilling for any of this stuff. I'm pretty sure that anybody who is watching this video already knows that Fuji makes good cameras. It's a matter of which one you like better. But if you are going to buy this camera, if you would use the links that I have, that would literally help me keep the camera and the lights running here and make more of these videos. So I would appreciate that. Just put a little shameless plug. Alright, so... And I have used this 23mm lens before, 35mm focal equivalent, and big fan of it. Probably my favorite, one of my favorite lenses. I can't really decide between the 23 f2 because of the fact that it's weather sealed, and I'm going to pre-gripe about the fact that this is not weather sealed. Not like it's a huge deal, but like weather sealing would just like blow my mind if they put some weather sealing on the XE3. But even without that, it's still, you know, it's not a deal breaker for me by any stretch. But the idea of being able to have a weather sealed lens like this that is priced, and that's one of the things I know I've had some conversations with some of you guys about, you know, whether the Fuji lens system ecosystem is really more affordable than a Sony lens system. Almost said phony by accident, channeling a little angry photographer there, a little Ken, unintentionally. You know, I think the issue is that a lot of the other lens systems, it's only their higher end lenses, like in Micro Four Thirds, and even with Sony, a lot of the weather sealed lenses that can complement a weather sealed body. And I don't even know anything about the weather sealed bodies on the, I think like the 6500 is the first one. I'm not even going to go there. I don't know about the weather sealing on the bodies for Sony's. But with Panasonic, for example, you know, it's usually like their higher end lenses that have weather sealing, where this is not, you know, this lens is well under $500 if you buy it brand new off Amazon, like straight out. And it's weather sealed. So that's a nice compliment, because when you get a weather sealed body, it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit if you have to, you know, if you can't buy an economical weather sealed lens that makes it a weather sealed unit. All right, enough about the weather sealing for the time being, and I am going to come back, read through your questions, and go through some of that stuff here. Let's see, we're 13 minutes in, and I am not going to unpack all of the cables and batteries. There is a flash with this, which, you know, the little flash is kind of neat, the little hot shoe flash. I never use them, and so I'm not going to start now for the purposes of this demonstration. It is something that I will look at, and I will get back to you guys on if you guys have specific questions about the flash that comes with. Okay. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that idea of heaven, which is just a whole bunch of cameras and lenses. Although I don't know if that would be quite as fun, given the fact that, you know, it's not having cameras that makes it fun to have a camera. Alright, so this takes the same battery as the XT2 and all the rest of the bigger cameras. Let me fire this thing up. And so just initial reactions, like, feels really good in the hand. You know, light but not flimsy. Doesn't feel, you know, super plasticky. Easy on off. And of course I'm going to have to get this set up now with the pair with smartphone. No, I'm going to have to skip that because I'm streaming on the smartphone. We will... Oh, how do I do this? Can I... Okay, so right here, this is... So just for starters, I'm running into a little, and again, this is something I will adapt to, but I'm running into, it's a little bit weird because I'm looking for buttons like the D-pad, and there is no D-pad. There is, you know, there's the joystick, which is something that honestly I've always been a little bit ambivalent about, but there is no, so I'm trying to, this may be a little bit humiliating here for me to try to get, okay, turn it off. I gotta try it again. Now granted, I'm under a little bit of pressure. I'm under the gun. I got like you guys watching me and stuff. I want to try to, okay, I want to skip. All right. Okay, sure. Where's okay? Is that okay? All right. Set the date, set the time. Alright, so here's the thing. I could spend the next like hour and a half getting this thing all set up. I am going to skip setting it up on the air here with you guys. Let me go through some of the questions. I'm going to answer the ones that I can in the remaining 15 minutes or so, and then we can kind of, you know, I wanted to say coagulate, but that's not the word I'm looking for. We can consolidate all the questions maybe in the comments below this, and then all the comments and the input that I get on this video will help me to build some reviews out so that I can kind of work with this. Because honestly, like, you know, I don't want to, there's a little bit of a learning curve, obviously, for just about every camera. So you want to be able to do that. One thing I want to do before I go through and start answering questions. It's interesting. This is, it feels about the same weight, maybe a tiny bit heavier than the 100F, but I really do like the little bit of extra positivity on the grip. And I'm going to go ahead and try throwing this bad boy, this little thumb grip on here, and that looks like it will fit perfectly. I haven't tightened it down, but I mean, look, beautiful colors. The grip is superb. I don't really even feel like I need this on here, honestly. I could probably do without it, but it might be a little bit different once I put the 16 on here, and I want to try that just to kind of see how it all balances out with a fatter lens, because, you know, balancing out with a little lens is kind of an easy trick to pull off, but bigger lens, it's a little bit more, that's a little bit tougher to sell, and I'm kind of torn between whether or not the 23 is my favorite lens or the 16. I really do like the 16 because ever since I really started shooting seriously, I've been pretty enamored with the 24mm focal length, mostly because a lot of landscape and climbing stuff, you want to be close to your subject and be able to still capture a lot of environment. So the type of work I was doing was, you know, mostly people who did not have a huge amount of vanity, so they weren't concerned about a little bit of distortion in the face and all that stuff. For the sake, they'd much rather have their face look a little bit distorted by a 24mm lens and have a really awesome, you know, badass climbing shot. So I kind of started using 24mm for everything, including, and that was what I shot completely, or pretty much universally, until I got a couple of portrait lenses. And really, it was the X100T by Fuji that really started moving me into thinking even about getting portrait lenses. So with the 16 on here, like, it's a little heavier. Like, it's noticeably heavier, but it doesn't feel bad. I would say that with the 16 on here, the thumb catch, the blue LensMate, I think is the LensMate thumb catch on here, actually feels much more comfortable than just like the normal built-in thumb grip. That's I would say that for the, but just for the 16mm lens. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this aside, stop playing with the new toys, so that I can actually answer some questions. And then once we kind of get an idea, take some inventory, questions that you guys have and all that, I'm going to take a little bit of time just to use the camera and not be, you know, it takes a little bit of time to break in and really get some good information that I can, you know, in turn give back to you all. So here we go. Let me scroll. Okay, so alrighty, Peter's still driving. Peter said go ahead and open it. Is the XE3 a rangefinder? You know, I believe it's like, if you mean, Mario, if you mean the XE3 a rangefinder in terms of the style of the body, yes, it is a rangefinder. I believe it's got the left side EVF on it. Or the, yeah. No, I don't want to pair with the smartphone. I just want to look through the thing. No, go away. Okay. Menu, okay. Go away. Okay, sweet. So yeah, I just wanted to look through that. So that's a little weird. I'm not super used to having kind of shooting with the left. I'm used to the XT2 like with that. Although I guess I don't really use the, and if I want to use, even though this is on the left, like the big selling point is that the left side you know, viewfinder is going to be, you know, such that you can use it with your right eye on the left side and not be smudging everything with your nose. But I still use my left eye anyways because it's dominant, and so I still smudge everything with my nose. So it'll be interesting to see how that works with the touchscreen. And I know that it is going to be a big, you know, it's going to be a learning curve to kind of get over the adjustment to a touchscreen and not using the D-pad, because I feel like that was one thing that felt pretty consistent across all the different Fuji bodies, is that the D-pad and the way everything was laid out was, for the most part, you know, there's a couple of things that would be a little bit different, but the most part it was, you know, you could kind of step fairly seamlessly from one camera into the next. And what I'm doing here, I am going to switch back to the 23 because I just want to have a look. My initial impression of the viewfinder is that the viewfinder is a little smaller or harder to, not quite as good as, I know that's not the most descriptive term, but I know on the XT2, even the X Pro 1 and the X100F, I always felt like the viewfinder was a real joy to use, very, you know, very large and bright, even with glasses and all that. It was just, you know, real easy to work with. Like, I didn't have to have my eye pressed right up against it. I could be even a little bit away, and that's, you know, that's super easy. Whereas this, yeah, I guess it's about the same. It feels just a tiny bit different. It feels a little bit smaller. Yeah, I mean, you can see there's a slight difference in the shape, and I will hold these up so you can kind of get a sense of this. You know, there's hard to put them both in frame at the same time, but it's, you know, the 100F is a little bit bigger and brighter, and the, you know, the XE3 is it's bigger and rounder, I should say, not necessarily brighter. Like, they're both good viewfinders. It's just this one seems a little bit harder to see out of with glasses, if I'm being honest. And I'm not a huge viewfinder guy. Like, I like to, you know, look through it a little bit sometimes. So, anyways, rather than try to pick the camera apart at this point and get too into the weeds there, let me keep going through. I believe, in answer to your question, though, Mario, where I started out on this little narrative journey a few moments ago, was the rangefinder style. I believe this is it is considered a rangefinder style. Okay. Sean Kim, glad to hear that you're printing photos. 20 by 30 prints look amazing. I am not surprised to hear that at all. The Fuji prints, actually, I have some that are right up there, excluding this one, which is a family photo from like when I was like 3. Those are all Fuji prints from Standing Rock, and yes, the Fuji XT2 makes really phenomenal prints, absolutely. Okay, where were we? King Yuzi asked if they had the same sensor. They do. It is a compact. It definitely is a compact camera, and if you want something that's a little bit more beefy, the XE3 is probably, because it's actually a little smaller even than I mean, not by much. You can see there's not a huge size difference there. It's, you know, like half of a centimeter or so in terms of the body size. It's very comparable in size, maybe a tiny bit smaller, tiny bit lighter. Actually, no, it's a tiny bit heavier. It's a tiny bit smaller. The XE3 is a tiny bit smaller and a tiny bit heavier, more dense than the X100F. So it's definitely in that compact, you know, comparable compact range, I would say. So let's see. Adrian, yes, I do need better lighting. This is not my normal setup here. This is kind of my editing area right now. My daughter is sleeping in my studio, if you will, and so yeah, you are correct about that. Are these smaller cameras as weatherproof compared to DSLRs? No, is the answer to that question. I think a lot of the higher end DSLRs, at least the full frame ones by Nikon that I know about, weather sealing is something that they do pretty well. They take advantage of the fact that they're not trying to make small cameras. They weather seal their cameras. Most of the mirrorless cameras are not weather sealed. So if you buy a full frame camera, more likely than not, in my experience, and I could be wrong about this, but in my experience, they are going to probably have some level of weather sealing on them. The little mirrorless cameras, they're all about maintaining, you know, compact size, and so they leave off weather sealing unless it's like kind of a bigger, higher end camera that is like a flagship. So the GH5 and the XT2 both have weather sealing. Honestly, with the X100F, because of the fact that they didn't really improve a whole bunch, I mean, like, the sensor is better over the X100T. You know, it's somewhat better, but like in terms of the autofocus speed and, you know, like they kind of, almost like what Apple did with the iPhone, where, you know, the first few were really amazing, and then after that it's just like, oh, we added more megapixels to the cameras, we added some cool new features, but there's nothing that's really game-changing. And the first few X100 series cameras, those really, they made, you know, they had more improvements that they could make from one model to the next, and from the T to the F. There were, you know, they refined it to the point where there wasn't much left for them to do, and one of the things that is, or was left for them to do, in my mind, I think would have been really beneficial, would be to weather seal it, because of the fact that a compact camera is gonna see more traveling, more adventuring, and not having to worry about that would be really nice. But yeah, that's my, not everybody necessarily experiences things the same way, because not everybody shoots outside as much as I prefer to, but the other part of that too is that it's very easy to bring along a dry bag and just pop your camera in there if it starts really precipitating heavily, and if you're just careful with your camera and it's precipitating lightly, you can still get away with it, and you should be fine. Or at least that's been my experience using both weather sealed and non-weather sealed cameras in all kinds of environments all over the country and world in some cases too. So you know, weather sealing, I know Ken, Angry Photographer Ken, he makes a big deal about saying weather sealing is such a crock and blah blah blah, and like to a point I agree with that, because, you know, it's not meant to, there's only so much weather sealing that you can practically build into a camera. It's not like the rain falling on the camera that is the sealing you need to be worried about. It's more the exposure to humidity and air and dust and things that are more incipient, I think is the word I'm looking for, but like longer, more projected over time, rather than the short-term acute weather problem. So there's some limited value to weather sealing, but I think that they should have, for the price tag and for the not awesome autofocus that the X100F has, which again, it's not bad, but when you're paying as much as that camera costs, you know, you're in the ballpark of the XT2, and yet the XT20 has faster autofocus and the XE3 has faster autofocus, yet you know, you kind of feel a little bit like, hey, come on, you know, you know, what is left for them to upgrade, and you'd like to see that happen. I mean, again, it's not bad, but it's definitely an area where there could be some improvement, and you know, it hasn't really gotten all the way there yet. Okay, where are we at here? Amit asks if the AF speed on the X100F improved with software. Now, Amit, I'm assuming that you mean with a new sensor in the 100F, as opposed to firmware updates. I am not aware of new firmware updates. I haven't updated the firmware beyond. I think they have like one firmware update out for the 100F. I've done that first one. If there's a second or third one, I have not done that. But just the sensor upgrade, the X-Trans 2 to the 3 and the X100T to the X100F, that alone has not really, that doesn't blow my hair back in terms of the autofocus speed. I think that the autofocus speed is very comparable between the 100F to the 100T, much more so than it would be comparable to the XT2. Maybe the XT2 before any of the firmware updates, because when the XT2 first came out, the autofocus honestly was not super impressive. Then they updated the firmware on the XT2, and it was snappy, and it was very, very responsive, and it was very impressive. And that's also the same time that they updated the video autofocus algorithm as well on the T2, and that really, really changed things a lot. It was very impressive. And I am going to, you know, really try to test out the video capabilities of this camera, shooting stuff on tripods, not trying to compare it to the GH5, because that would be murder. The GH5 with the in-body image stabilization is just not even fair to compare it at all. But just in terms of video quality and trying to do some stuff like that, it's more suited for, like on a tripod, looking at battery life, overheating, any of those issues, because, you know, theoretically a camera like this, one could do like talking head interview videos, YouTube videos with something like that. It would be really nice to see, but a camera that small, honestly, I'm a little skeptical about how it's going to do with battery, because small mirrorless cameras, the size advantages that we love about them also translate into battery lack of performance that is usually not super stellar. So that is my prediction at the outset. That's obviously, you know, just a guess, an educated guess based on what I've seen. Mario asks, what can the XE3 do better than your other cameras? From a practical standpoint, nothing, I don't think. Well, I mean, if we wanted to really split hairs, the autofocus is a little bit faster, and the video capability is in there compared to the X100F. And personally, when I kind of compare these cameras out, I'm not going to keep both the X100F and the XE3. So I'm going to try to make an assessment, make a decision based on which one suits my needs better, which one I like more, and I'm going to, you know, get rid of the one that doesn't, because financially it all pretty much washes out to be even, regardless which way I go. So it's you know, that's been my habit over the while. I get curious about a new camera. I like to play with them. I like cameras. I like photography, but I also like cameras just for camera's sake, and I don't mind admitting that, because it's not a specific limitation. Oh, I gave up on that fight, Samuel. Yeah, you know, especially around this time with the holidays, you know, I know people are looking for stuff about cameras, and frankly, I'm kind of curious about it myself too. So rather than sit on the sidelines and let everybody else have all the fun, I figure I can do it and check stuff out while not worsening my financial situation, because like I said, this all washes out even either way. And technically, if you count the ability to reach more people on YouTube and stuff by being able to have these conversations about cameras, which inevitably that is the reality, that, you know, photography, a lot of times that's part of how you get your foot on the ladder, is being able to have, you know, be able to have cogent discussions about gear, because that's what people are searching for, in addition to everything else. And so there's definitely some incentive there for me to cover new cameras, especially at this time of the year. But it is not, certainly is not, you know, a specific limitation that I have that I want to, you know, overcome through new gear. That's not it at all, and I would be disingenuous if I suggested that it was. I am very excited to try vintage glass on the X-Trans 3 sensor, because up till this point I've only been shooting vintage glass on the X Pro 1. which is a first generation sensor. And if there was one specific limitation that the XE3, if I was going to suggest that was worth it to overcome that limitation, is the fact that the newer guts and the hardware and technology in there makes manual focusing much more precise on the XE3 than on the X Pro 1. The X Pro 1, the autofocus peaking, manual focus assist is really, really, I mean, and again, I might be spoiled because I'm comparing it to the GH5 manual focus assist, which is amazing. It is impeccable on many levels. The focus peaking is amazing, and the manual focus assist is like very clear and sharp. So you get so much resolution when you are punched in on the manual focus assist with the GH5 that you can actually see very, very clearly what's in focus or what is not in focus. And so using manual lenses is much more precise and reliable. And one of the things that happened a lot with the X Pro 1, which is also most likely going to be going to the happy hunting grounds, so to speak, you know, the manual focus, which especially given how much I have developed a passion for shooting with vintage glass now, the manual focus assist stuff that is on the X Pro 1 in comparison looks like there could be some value there too. But I'm, you know, not 100% sure that that is the case, but that is something that I would, again, taking an educated guess at this point, I would say that that is likely. So, yeah, there you go. This stuff for me, honestly, goes kind of goes in cycles, because there's sometimes when I have it coming in, and then there's sometimes when I don't. And yeah. Chris Chan says, personally excited about this camera. Thank you, Chris. I look forward to any specific questions that you or anybody has. Make sure to leave those as comments below after I'm done, so that I can kind of have everything collected in one place. That would make my life easier and make it possible for me to answer your questions as they come along a little bit more effectively. But you can also do that on social media. Anybody who is not already following me, I'm at Living Vertical on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram, and I'll kind of go wherever I get questions or comments. I'll reply there, usually relatively quickly. King Yuzi asks, how fat does it get with a pancake lens small enough for inside a jacket pocket? You know, so this is as pancakey. I don't think you're going to get much smaller than this lens on here, like the 23. You know, there might be a couple lenses that are within a centimeter of this, but I would say, you know, depends on the jacket. I'm trying it on this jacket right now, and it's like, you know, this is not a super. I can get it in there. You know, it's certainly not impossible, but I don't know that I would like go out to eat with a camera in my pocket as such, because this looks a little funny. And it also would be kind of challenging to deploy at need if it's in there. But it is, you know, it definitely is very, very small. And that's one of the things that's a little weird about it, is like these cameras are so small, but at the same time, just the shape is still a little bit awkward for carrying around, where it's like if you look at this, and again, splitting hairs a little bit maybe, but this easily goes in a jacket pocket, this doesn't. And so that is something that I'm going to have to consider when weighing these two options against each other, is the little bit of sharpness and being able to change lenses, which again, I hate changing lenses, so you know, there's some pros and cons right there that I'm working with, but this is very clearly much smaller and jacket pocketable. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as far as the profile of this camera goes. Okay, we are at 38 minutes. I actually went over a little bit longer than I wanted to. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video and ask questions about this stuff. I am going to be, as I mentioned, I've threatened to do more live streams, and as of this week, you may notice that I've been following through and I've been doing multiple live streams every week, because it's harder for me right now. I am in nursing school, pre-nursing, and I am teaching as well as taking classes that are very challenging for me. Plus, I am maintaining content on the Living Vertical feed and channels, and doing some documentary projects and all of that stuff. Yes, Samuel, this is going to be, I'm wrapping up the Friday night, because one of the things that typically happens, my weekends are with my family, and rather than kind of condensing everything into one big marathon session on Friday night that kind of takes up, big part of my weekend that I can't get back elsewhere. Thank you very much for that super chat, Peter. You are a scholar and a gentleman. What I've decided to do is do more live streams and kind of break things up a little bit more, so that way I have a chance to kind of focus the live streams. And so far it seems to have been effective, even just looking at the view count on some of the live streams that I've done this past week. Rather than do a 3-hour session where I cover 10 different things, I do one live stream for like 30 or 40 minutes. Maybe 20 minutes where I cover like 1 or 2 things, and then that way it's a little bit more useful to folks, and it also gives me a chance to kind of keep the channel a little bit more active, and then also have manage my time a little bit better, I guess, is kind of where I'm at. So I do intend to be checking back in with you all. If you follow me on Twitter, I always announce on Twitter and in my Instagram stories before I come here and go live on the air, so that way either you can enable notifications here. If you're not already subscribed, I would love it if you subscribe to the channel, because I am committed to really discussing ways we can have more fun with the camera. And right now, fun with the camera for me means trying a new one and seeing what it does, how I like it, and playing with some vintage lenses. On there. But yeah, I've for a frame of reference, I know my video on why I quit pro photography and all that stuff, that has kind of been getting a lot of play, and any of you who may have found me through those videos, I just want to confirm that I'm way happier having actually made decisions to change things that were not really working so well for me in my life, and just step away from photography as a profession, embrace it more as something that is a passion, something that is a hobby, something that is part of my life but doesn't govern my life as such. And it's really made it possible for me to I think have a better relationship with it, and still be able to think about it and still have income potential with all of this stuff, but to do it from a secondary standpoint and to really be moving forward on the things that are the most important, which ultimately is like time with family, health, and mental health, as well as physical health too, instead of being like stressed out about not being able to get, being stressed out about all those damn kids with their iPhones, and how nobody wants to pay money for your work anymore. Kind of take a different tack and still do work when it makes sense, but not have to. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys tonight. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you all on the next videos. And if you have any camera purchases that you're going to buy, check the links down below. Again, shameless plug there, but those little bits of affiliate revenue that I get from those of you who use my Amazon links, first of all, thank you so much. And my Patreon supporters, patreon.com/livingvertical. You guys are helping me make these videos, helping me make the documentary photo projects and video projects that I'm working on right now, actually the month of November, for diabetes awareness. I've been working on a project about insulin awareness, or insulin access, I'm sorry, and awareness of just people who are struggling to be able to get that life-saving medication. And that is a medication I take multiple times every day through injections, and I would die without it. And it's a big concern when your livelihood, basically if the air that you breathe were cost $1,000 a month, and that was on top of everything else that you had to do with your life. So kind of a big issue that's near and dear to my heart. But all the stuff that I'm doing, it's all, thanks to the support of you guys that tune in and that are a part of this. So appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next episode of the Adventures Photo Show. Take care.